The apocalypse is the thinning of the veil, revealing unseen truths. It's an awakening. Some believe the whole world will go through it all at once. Others tend to think it's a personal passage. Going through this portal is no picnic, but as scary as it seems, a personal apocalypse, a personal revelation, is a gift. So stay tuned for this gruesome affair. A homeless man in my town says the apocalypse is near. I'm starting to believe him.
Finding yourself in the talons of an owl in the shadows of the forest moonlight, it's a gruesome affair.
We call him the Man in Black, Alex said. For the last month, I've been out of the country because of my trip to Europe. Unbeknownst to me, apparently a crazy hobo started to make atrocious claims that the apocalypse is near. All he does is protest in town with his crazy signs. He says an apocalypse is near, but he never provides any more details than that. Here, take a look at this, Alex said as he handed me his phone to show the local headlines from last month. Local homeless man claims the apocalypse is near. Could he be the second coming of Christ or just a fraud? I scrolled down to look at the details. The first thing that caught my eye was the picture of the man himself. In a strange way, he felt more like an alien than a man, and insanity seemed to be the best way to describe who he was. He was much shorter than the average person, and his height barely seemed to reach 5 feet. His arms were very skinny, and the proportions of his twisted shoulders along with his inconsistent-looking torso made him seem like a combination of different puzzle pieces attempting to pass as a human, just like the epithet Man in Black would suggest. All of his clothings were black, hiding most identifiable traits. His sunglasses and black mask covered his face. The black suit and pants covered his entire body, leaving barely any trace of skin to be exposed. On August 21st, a mysterious man covering himself in all black made history. After disrupting the local soccer game, he started protesting that the apocalypse is near. Despite his famous reputation, nobody is able to identify who he is. Many sources claim that he is the Son of God who came to warn humanity. Others claim him to be just a mental patient who doesn't have a few things right in his mind. It's probably nothing. Things like this happen every time. Remember how the ancient Mayans claimed the world would end in 2013? Alex said. Even though I've only seen his picture once, something about this homeless man caught my attention. We walked alongside each other to our neighborhood as Alex started to talk about his dog, family, and girlfriend, topics I found quite frankly dull. I found myself zoning out into my own thoughts, wondering what I should ask the man if I meet him at all. Suddenly, a voice from far away halted my train of thought. The world is ending. We need to work together to stop this. Without having to look at who it was, both Alex and I knew that it was the infamous Man in Black. Alex started to sigh and roll his eyes, turning the other way. Come on, let's go. You don't want to get involved with him. Regardless of what Alex said, I found myself walking towards the man. I didn't know what it was, but having to speak with him just felt right. Perhaps talking to him will solve the answer. I allowed my footsteps to carry me, and I found myself standing in front of the Man in Black himself. He looked similar to what I saw in the headlines. A black cap, sunglasses, and a black mask, along with a black jacket and black pants despite the heat. There were still many apparent differences compared to the pictures. Unlike in the headlines, his body seemed to have aged almost a decade. Even though it was hard to catch, there were many scars seen on his face, and his skin looked much dirtier. A close look revealed a huge scar passing by his nose, reaching far down to the corner of his lips. However, the most obvious difference was the attention he was receiving, or a lack thereof. In the pictures, a crowd of people were surrounding him, whether they be believers of his claims or just journalists. Now, all that was left of him were his signs. Despite his efforts, nobody seemed to even give him a look of attention, ignoring him as if he just became a natural part of their lives. Instinctively, I knew the moment he saw me, his eyes lit up. Just like how I wanted to meet him, it seemed like he wanted to meet me as well. Maybe it was because he was lonely.
"Hello there, sir,"
he joyously exclaimed. While I hesitated to do so at first, I offered a handshake as a greeting. "Hi, my name's Max. I just wanted to meet you after I saw you on the news." The man shook my hand excitedly as he started to say, "What a coincidence. My name's Max as well." Before I got a chance to speak, he continued rambling. "Max, the world is going to end soon. Everything on this earth will die. I saw it with my own eyes. It was a long time ago, so I don't exactly remember everything, but everyone was gone, even the animals and plants. Nobody believes me, but I know you will." "Right, and how do you know all this?" I asked. Max fell silent for a moment. Then he answered without a single tone of irony or sarcasm. "Well, Max, living through all of history changes a man." The man continued rambling on, telling me anecdotes of various things he experienced from the age of dinosaurs, the French Revolution, and many other historical events I didn't recognize. His details of those events were very vivid and specific, almost as if they were words taken out of a book. As his rant continued on, it felt like he was stuck in his own imagination, forgetting that he was talking to me in the first place. Something about the man spoke to me in a strange way, even though I didn't really believe what he said. His way with words hypnotized me into his stories, and I could certainly see him tricking people into believing he was a savior or a messiah. However, to me, he wasn't. "Well, it was nice talking to you, Max. I hope to see you around more." I tried to end the conversation, knowing that there was no point in talking to him anymore. "My pleasure," Max replied, as if sensing my feeling of alienation. I started to walk towards Alex, and together we walked to our neighborhood. Obviously, I didn't know much about Max, but based on the short conversation we had, I was able to tell that he dove too far into the pool of madness. He was just a madman with a few things wrong in his head. He was a self-obsessed lunatic, lost in his own fantasies, too stubborn to accept a reality that clashed with his imaginations. While his demeanor looked convincing at first, every one of his actions felt uncanny, like an alien imitating a human. And obviously his blabbering about the apocalypse was nonsense. There was no way the world will end anytime soon. Talking to him was a waste of my time, and I eventually got him out of my mind. It wasn't until a few weeks later that I was reminded of Max. I was watching some news after a long day of work when I saw a surprising story about him. For tonight's local news, we have shocking news regarding the man in black. After being quite the social media star for the last month, it seems that he has finally found his place among the dead. Just today, a recording of his final moments has been posted online. Let's play the video. A warning of disturbing content popped up, and the video played. In it, Max was crying in pain, looking at the sky in a mix of rage and despair while kneeling on the floor. He then yelled, "Nobody in this reality understands. With my efforts, I will help you see. I need to find a way. I must find a way. Even if it takes 100 years, even if it means I'll sell my soul, I'll do it. I will find a way to prevent this apocalypse." Compared to the conversations I had with him before, his voice was much more inhumane. It resembled that of a dying horse more than a person, and I was able to tell that his descent into madness had intensified. Suddenly, something under his skin started to shift. His eyes rolled back as black smoke rose from his mouth. He grew silent and dropped to the floor, motionless. The footage transitioned back into the news, but whatever was being reported escaped my attention. Seeing a man die in front of my eyes was truly a terrifying experience, and I felt everything I ate swelling back to my throat. What kind of sick freak would film a man dying, let alone post the footage for everyone to see? While I didn't know him personally, I felt pity for Max. His talk about the apocalypse was clearly insane, but I didn't want him to die, much less in such a gruesome way. It was at that moment when everything went wrong. I started to lose sense of my body. My arms and legs started to relax, and my eyelids grew heavy. At first, I thought I was falling asleep, but the feeling was much more alien. I started panicking. What's happening to me? As my mind grew more terrified, my body started to relax even more. Soon, instead of controlling my own body, I felt more of a bystander watching someone else control me, while my consciousness remained in my flesh. I tried everything to gain my senses back, flexing the muscles in my arms and kicking myself in the leg, but all that I was left with was my sense of helplessness. My body was completely at the mercy of this unknown power, and there was nothing I could do about it. I started to scream internally, cursing at whatever is making me feel this way. My vision started to grow dark, and I felt myself falling under an abyss with an invisible force attracting me. Suddenly, I heard many voices climbing into my ears. All he does is protest all day in town with his crazy signs. But Mom, I completely flunked it. Everybody makes mistakes. Nobody in this reality understands. I had a dream. The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear. More and more voices joined the crowd, intensifying into a loud scream. My eardrums felt like they could explode at any moment, and I closed my eyes and silently begged for it all to just end. As if listening to my prayers, the sounds suddenly stopped. Not a gradual decline, but a rush of silence, as if someone muted the voices all at once. I slowly opened my eyes, not knowing what to expect. The sight that beheld immediately flooded my senses with amazement. Bright orbs constantly shifting into silhouettes that danced in front of me, seducing my eyes and soul as awe and wonder flooded into my heart and brain. The blue emerald atmosphere surrounding me was arcane, a color brighter and purer than any jewelry I've ever seen, similar to that of the coral reefs of the ocean with an impossibly infinite floor. Seeing the lights inhibiting the atmosphere was truly a spectacle, and it felt like watching the creation of the universe and Earth itself. The figures of light twirling and spinning around, cherishing the birth of a new generation of life. I slowly attempted to move my body, and to my surprise, I found moving to be rather easy. I propelled myself into various directions, feeling as if I was swimming in an infinite sea of light with hope and optimism. After exploring my surroundings some more, I eventually found something different, light emitting in the shape of a rectangle. Curious as to what it may be, I swam towards the direction of the rectangle. It soon dawned on me that it wasn't a single rectangle that I was looking at. What I saw closely resembled a videotape, a collection of endless figures of light lining up. Another feature that caught my attention was the sound that emitted from these rectangles. Similarly to the voices I heard before, the rectangles were speaking in voices that I didn't recognize. A closer examination of the voices made me realize that some of the voices sounded familiar. While it was only a small fragment, I was able to recognize some words, from my own to my friends and family. Soon it finally dawned on me. The voices were a collection of the voices of people across all history, playing among the rectangles like a radio. I looked deeper into these oddly illuminating shapes, trying to find the source of the voices. As I looked deeper into one particular rectangle, I was able to see people inside. 2 knights in silver chainmail armor dueling in the field of a medieval castle. The people inside the rectangle weren't moving, but were frozen like a photo, a record of one specific moment in time. At first, I thought the people inside the rectangles were making the voice, but I soon realized that that wasn't the case. In fact, as I was focusing on one rectangle, no voice was to be heard at all. The voices were only heard as I moved across each rectangle. Hearing the voices of everyone in history and seeing history play right before my eyes as each rectangle passed by was like watching a film, a movie that contains all of history. Fascinated by its unexpected feature, I started to explore the rectangles further. I started to touch and scroll around the rectangle further. Soon, I found myself observing every corner of the earth, from the depths of the Amazon forest to the Great Wall of China. These rectangles, whatever they were far more powerful than whatever I could imagine. They were the embodiment of space and time itself, from the bacteria living in its realm of microorganisms to the countless galaxies that make up the universe. From the Big Bang to the infinite expansion of the universe, all past, present, and future were one in these rectangles, for they made up the very concept of time itself. They were both the key and gate that watched our every movement and knew all the mysteries humanity craved to solve all these years. Realizing the power I had in my hands, I started to move towards the rectangles in the future excitedly. As I examined every rectangle, I found myself staring in awe as the historical moments I read about in the textbooks fluttered by my eyes. As the voices played in my ears as I moved, it felt like I was part of the rectangle itself, experiencing the history of Earth firsthand. From the cold ice age, I saw trillions of species adapt and evolve as time passed. While many died off and went extinct, many were able to adapt, survive despite the disastrous changes. Even in their darkest days, they still had a sense of hope and desire for survival, allowing Earth to garner the next generation of organisms. I saw the very first human evolve from an ape. I saw the immigration of humanity to different continents in the world. I saw the creation of the English language and Christopher Columbus discovering the Americas. I saw the foundation of the United States and the Constitution being written. I saw Martin Luther King himself giving his "I Have a Dream" speech. I saw human civilization mature from the puny buildings of stones to mighty skyscrapers, and it was truly beautiful to see humanity grow from the primordial ages to the present day. The vision reminded me that despite our physical and psychological limitations, we are still capable of accomplishing unimaginable things. A sense of inspiration grew from my heart as I watched humanity grow from one of many unimportant species on the planet up to the rulers of the earth. As I moved further into the future, eventually I saw my own past. It looked like I was about 12 years old, and I held a test sheet with my big red F on it. The younger me was crying in tears of sorrow as he dug deeper into my mom's arms. "I wish I could go back in time, Mommy," younger Max said to his mother. With that, I traveled further into the future, eventually finding myself on the borderline between present and the future, the ultimate threshold of belonging and unbelonging. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. To be honest, I wasn't quite sure what to expect to see in the future, if I wanted to see anything at all. How and when do I die? What does a human civilization look like? Did I truly want to know the answers to the questions, to be cursed with knowledge? After gathering my thoughts, I came to an answer. Yes, I did want to see what the future held. Arriving at this place was the greatest blessing in my life, and I knew that it was my job, my duty, to lead humanity into the next steps of evolution after learning everything that I've experienced here. I decided to look into the future, to dive into the pool of forbidden knowledge that may drive me into infinite knowledge or madness. Despite my heart exploding with a mix of excitement and dread, I still didn't have the guts to fully see the future. Knowing that I didn't have the capacity to understand what I was about to witness, I decided to close my eyes and only listen, promising to myself to only open my eyes at what seemed like the right moment. After taking a deep breath, I slowly moved towards the future, taking in everything that the future had to offer. I wasn't quite sure how far I had traveled, but I stopped when the rectangles grew silent. The only thing that was heard was the empty sound of wind. Only the echoing sound from the rectangles before could be heard, lingering in my ears. Confused, I opened my eyes and looked into the rectangles to see if anything was wrong. I was able to see the earth, but something wasn't right. There wasn't any light coming from the cities, and the earth lost all its colors as if it was covered with volcanic ash. I quickly zoomed into the earth to see what was wrong. The cities were empty, with cars crashed into buildings and buses. The trees and grass were all dry and lifeless, giving the atmosphere a dreadful gray tone. That's when I saw the corpses lying on the ground. A sudden chill ran down my spine, and I looked closer to figure out what might have caused the massacre. A plague, perhaps a meteor. To my surprise, the bodies showed no trace of harm, except for the fact that they were not moving at all. The bodies looked almost alive, no scars, no wounds, and no signs of decomposition. It looked as if people dropped dead out of the blue, their bodies freezing in time. It wasn't just people either. I was able to see all the animals, from the pigeons on the street to the lizards in the bush laying on the ground lifeless. Just like the other dead bodies on the street, it had no sign of harm or decomposition. Of course, there were many extinctions in the past, but unlike this one, many species were able to survive and prosper. They were able to adapt and change with the times. However, this time, it seemed like there wasn't any time to adapt at all. There was no sense of hope or desire, no survival to allow Earth to garner the next generation of organisms. From the microscopic bacteria to the majestic blue whales, nobody seemed to be aware or prepared. Death came and went silently with no warning, and nobody was spared. I searched every place in the world, from the very depths of the caves to the grand city of New York, but the results were all the same. All I saw were dead bodies of humans and animals lying on the floor, giving me no clue as to what caused their death. After seeing human civilization develop from the Stone Age, I would be lying to say it wasn't haunting to see it all crumble at once. Everything that we have worked for looked meaningless. After hearing the empty echoes of winds in the city, at the end of the day, death was the only thing to greet us no matter what. Instead of a scream, the world seemed to end with a whimper. The drastic contrast of the optimistic past and pessimistic future started to overwhelm my brain. Contrasting images of prospering life of the past to the dead bodies in the future flashed before my eyes, and I felt my sense of reality crack as I struggled to find a middle point between the two. Despite my mixed emotions, I still had a shred of hope. I started to search my own town for clues. I already knew what to expect, but nonetheless, the sight of my parents' dead bodies shook me to my core. Just like everybody else, Their body was no different, lying on the floor with their eyes open. Seeing them lifeless on the floor made me cry tears of sorrow. I could almost see them alive, smiling and greeting me at the front door. While I knew that their death was in the future, the very thought of them leaving this earth rendered me hopeless. Sometime after, I started to calm myself down. Crying about their death wouldn't help me, and I had more important priorities to solve. I searched further into my town, thinking perhaps there were different survivors. Unsurprisingly, I was able to find the bodies of all of my friends and coworkers. Just like I expected, I wasn't able to find any clue as to what caused this massacre. After searching for some survivors and failing to find any, I zoomed out of my town and back to see Earth in its full form. Despite everything that happened, it was ironic that the universe looked at peace. Everywhere else in the universe was no different from usual. The Earth was the only dysfunctional piece in the puzzle. Seeing the drastic contrast between Earth and the universe made me realize that humanity was merely ants living on a placid island of ignorance in the mists of a black sea, and our extinction doesn't have any significance. The universe will continue to exist no matter what, even after we are all gone. Regardless, I had to find a way to prevent this apocalypse. While I may not be able to prevent it, I still had to at least know how it happens. I started to move my body towards the left when I heard the sound that made my heart sink. Tick, tick, tock, tick, tick, tock. A sound echoed into the atmosphere. The sound was very rhythmic and cold, reminding me of a clock. However, as the noise started to slowly grow, eventually I noticed other sounds growing along with it. At first, it was nothing but small sounds of crickets. However, the sound quickly escalated as painful cries of animals and humans started to echo along the atmosphere. Eventually, the sounds of the creatures overpowered the ticking sound, and soon the roar grew to be a distorted mix of haunted cries burning in the fiery depths of hell. I covered my ears with all my strength, but the sound still pierced my hand and it felt like my ears were exploding. As the sound intensified, the bright blue atmosphere started to bleed into red as if gallons of blood were flooding the ocean. The bright orbs of light started to darken, eventually turning into miniature black holes resembling viruses claiming countless victims, leading to their deaths. Seeing the darkness inhibiting the bloody atmosphere was nothing but horrific, and it felt like watching the death of all life and destruction of the universe itself. The figures of darkness twirling and spinning around, claiming one soul after another, satisfying their thirst for blood. The black hole started to frantically circle the creature as it emerged, dancing as they welcomed their master. It started to slowly emerge, and the moment I saw its appearance, I felt my mind cornering into insanity. My sense of reality shattering as horrors far transcending my darkest nightmares started to grow before my eyes. Its legs were as big as a mountain, and the body it was attached to was bigger than the ocean itself. That appearance was only a small fragment of its true form. As I saw its full body extend far beyond my vision, I tried to look further into the creature's body but stopped myself, knowing it would further drive me into madness. It had shape, but it wasn't composed of matter, 1,000 shapes of horror beyond all memory. Its body was a mix of chaotic balls of light and smoke, the tone and form of its body constantly shifting, the slime keeping its body together, fluttering my eyes with a firework of alien colors that nearly blinded me. Attached to its form resembling a body were vaguely spherical shapes similar to eyes, staring at me as a reminder that nobody else belonged here, except for the creature itself.
No good, no evil, no life or death, only it, the null. It was the symbol of hopelessness, the embodiment of despair. My lips trembled and my legs turned to jelly, my body freezing in sight, my guts tied into a knot, making me sick. My instincts told me that there was no escape from this thing, and I was at its mercy. The creature did not know that I existed, nor did it care. To it, I was nothing but a speck of dust floating in the air, floating to wherever the wind carried it to be. It may destroy me in the process, but it was never intentional, nothing but an accident. Just as the incomprehensible horror started to settle into my mind, the creature acted strangely. The smoke making up its body started to move in a gradual pattern, moving from the center of its body outwards. A hole of darkness about the size of a football field emerged from the center of its body. Slowly, I felt the darkness pulling everything around it. It devoured everything in its path, from the miniature black holes to the rectangles, and I was no exception. I knew that I didn't stand a chance, but I desperately tried to pedal back. As if to laugh at my efforts, I was eventually sucked into the hole, a pit of endless darkness. I closed my eyes, preparing for the eventual darkness, welcoming the sweet mercy of death that will release me from whatever this creature is. However, after some time, nothing happened. A calm, silent tone pierced the atmosphere, but as far as I can tell, I was still breathing. I opened my eyes in confusion, trying to see what happened. Opening my eyes didn't prove to be different, as whatever place I was in had absolutely no light in it, nothing but darkness itself. I was stuck in an eternal abyss with no light to rely on. To my relief, a thick ray of light pierced the darkness. The light allowed me to see my surroundings, and seeing another man standing in front of me and behind me made my heart prosper a shred of hope. I tried to scream for help and shake my arms up, only to realize that I couldn't. I wasn't able to move my body, and could do nothing but watch. I felt as if my mind was stuck in a statue. I tried to budge, freeing myself from this endless prison, only to give up a few seconds later. After everything I've been through, I came to accept the fact that I could do nothing to change my fate. I could only beg for mercy. Just then, a previously unknown detail caught my attention. Initially, I believed that there was only one person standing in front of me, but a closer look showed an endless amount of more identical men standing in a line before me. I was just part of that line, and it reminded me of the rectangles lining up. To my horror, a closer look at the men revealed a terrifying detail. The men standing in front and back of me were all me. Same clothes, same body, and same posture. It seemed like infinite copies of myself were lining up, just like when two mirrors are placed next to each other. As I came to this realization, I realized that the other me in front of the line started to hold his hand up, examining his surroundings. Then the copy of me behind it followed, and so did the one behind, and the one behind as well. Before I knew it, a wave of hands were held up before my eyes. Eventually, the man standing in front of me mimicked his actions, and it seemed like it would be my turn next. As if my body went into an autopilot, I felt my body moving on its own, mirroring the actions of the infinite copies of myself performed beforehand. I felt like a puppet, controlled by strings of an entity beyond my power. Every little action that the men in front of me performed echoed throughout every other version of ourselves, each small decision altering who every copy of ourselves was. We had no control over our own body or faith, and I realized we were stuck in an endless loop of time.
The sight of seeing multiple copies of myself made my skin crawl. My own skin felt alien to my soul, and it almost felt like I was starting to lose myself, of my identity. If all these things, men before and after me, were all me, who am I? Every single copy of myself was all equally myself, and I had no special qualities separating myself from the other. I was just one of many, insignificant and replaceable. As my identity crisis intensified, I started to realize that the feeling of alienation of my own body was becoming quite literal. I saw the countless copies of myself before me starting to look at their arms, to see an unknown creature crawling underneath their skin. Soon I saw it in my own arms as well. I wasn't the only thing occupying my own flesh, and whatever the other thing was trying to alternate who I was, shifting me to whatever fits its vision. A haunting scream spread throughout the atmosphere as the men before me started to fall to the ground, screaming in agony. Dreading what was to arrive, my heart started to race. Suddenly, I felt an indescribable pain start to spread across my body, and it felt like my flesh was burning. I fell to my knees in pain and agony, and I closed my eyes to forget whatever was happening to me. Sounds of bones cracking across my shoulders and torso echoed, and my face felt like it was being dipped into magma. The screams of myself echoed, and I started to faint, unable to handle all the pain. My eyes started to slowly open as I felt drops of water falling on my cheeks. What stood before my eyes was grass, green and alive more than ever. In shock, I slowly rose from the ground. I examined my surroundings, realizing that I was in my neighborhood. A rush of relief flooded my heart as I felt the rain smeared across my face. What a feeling it is to be alive. The chuckles that escaped my mouth eventually grew into a triumphant laughter as I realized that I was back home, back to earth where I belonged. I started to walk, placing one foot before another, a foreign feeling I missed desperately. I laid on the wet, muddy floor, cherishing the beautiful life Mother Earth has given us. That didn't last long, as overwhelming exhaustion took over my body. Everything that I had been through was too much for both my body and my mind, and I realized that I needed a break. I was able to think of a place that could give me that, my parents' home. I started to walk in the direction of my parents' home, knowing that they lived in the same neighborhood. As I started to walk, I felt that something was off. Moving my body felt alien. I felt much shorter, and the world seemed so much bigger than before. My shoulders were twisted oddly, and I found my center of balance shifting constantly. However, all that didn't matter to me. I just wanted to collapse into bed, washing away the terrible memories. The walk to my parents' home took longer than expected. When I started my journey, the sun was barely setting, and when I reached their doorstep, the sun was completely engulfed by the horizon. I knocked on the door and heard my mom's footsteps. As I saw my mother's face through the door, a huge grin spread across my face, delighted to see the person who resembled home and pleasure. However, she seemed to have different opinions. As she opened the door to see me, her eyes and mouth widened as she dropped to the floor out of terror. My smile quickly morphed into a frown, and I reached my hand out to help her. As I did so, she started to squirm in horror and started to beg, "Please, I have a son and husband." Out of confusion, I attempted to calm her down. "Mom, it's me, Max." As these words escaped my mouth, I realized that they sounded alien. My voice sounded much more crisp and hoarse, as if it had aged decades. Just as I finished my sentence, I saw my dad walking from the living room, aiming a rifle at my face. "I don't remember having a son like you," he said as he placed his finger on the trigger.
My parents' eyes were filled with terror and nervousness, and I felt like an alien. The look they gave me was haunting, more than anything I've seen so far. Haunting seeing them and their lifeless eyes staring at my soul. To get out of this awful situation, I turned and ran into the night as drops of water flowed down my face. I wasn't quite sure if they were raindrops or tears. After some time, I stopped to gather my breath. A puddle of rain was gathering in front of me, and for the first time, I got a chance to examine how I looked. In a strange way, I looked more like an alien than a man, and insanity seemed to be the best way to describe who I was. My arms were very skinny, and the proportions of my twisted shoulders, along with my inconsistently looking torso, made me seem like a combination of different puzzle pieces attempting to pass as a human. But worst of all was my face. My previously brown hair turned black, and a huge scar passed by my nose, reaching far down to the corner of my lips. Instead of my bright blue eyes, I found them to be black instead, an eternal abyss staring back at me. As my examination ended, the memories of what I saw and the other permeated my brain. Seeing every moment in history, seeing the dead bodies in the future, seeing the eldritch abomination of infinite copies of myself, all these memories echoed in my mind and proved to be too much, and I felt my perception of reality shatter. Was all of it just a dream? Was it all real? The sheer insanity of the situation dawned on me, and I was unable to control my endless laughter. Contrary to the triumphant laugh before, this one had an underlying tone of madness and sorrow. What a situation I was stuck in. I laughed louder and louder. The sound gradually turned into a sob. We were never alone in this universe, and I was the very first person to see the truth hidden behind the walls. The eldritch abomination living beyond our dimension, ruling over a reality beyond our own. How could I ever live again properly after seeing everything I did? How would I ever feel safe after knowing that there was something out there watching every one of my moments, ready to kill me at any moment? Terrible thoughts started to permeate my mind as I wondered if anything I did had any meaning. What's the point of all this evolution and adaptation if at the end of the day it won't be enough to stop the apocalypse? As if to counter my negative thoughts, memories of various moments in history glazed my thoughts. As I recalled seeing the birth and prosperity of life, the beauty of life was insignificant to death, and nothing was meaningless in the end. Humanity is capable of accomplishing unimaginable things. A sense of determination grew from my heart as the terrifying memories started to fade away from my brain. They were replaced with visions of the birth of life and the smiles of people. No, I thought to myself, nothing is meaningless. Didn't everything you see prove so? Wasn't it truly magnificent to see humanity grow? Isn't it worth it to save all of it? I couldn't let generations of human civilization go down the drain because of a bad memory, and I had to warn everyone about the apocalypse. I didn't know what it was or when it would happen, but I knew that I could stop it. I will prove that no, humanity isn't weak. We're not just meaningless dust. We're capable of protecting ourselves and always will be. First things first, I need to find a way to tell everyone that the apocalypse is near. I started to walk around aimlessly, looking for anywhere that people may be. As I did, I felt a terrifying sensation crawling in my brain. My head started to grow blank as I started to lose memories of my life. Who was I? Who were my parents? Where was I from? I tried desperately to hold on to my memories, only for them to escape faster and faster. Soon, all my memories were gone,
and all that was left in my brain was the terrifying experience and my will to stop the apocalypse. The only personal detail left in my brain was my name, Max. Even that seemed insignificant. Losing my memory was terrifying at first, but soon I came to accept it as part of my destiny, and in a strange way felt relieved by it. All those memories were distractions, and I needed to focus on the task that the universe has cursed me with. I walked for hours, and eventually I saw the sun rising from the horizon, the birth of a new day. The daylight made it easier for me to observe my surroundings, and I saw a soccer stadium nearby. Cheers emitted from the field, and I realized that was the perfect place to start my quest. A shred of humanity seemed to remain inside me, as I felt ashamed to show my face in public. I looked for a way to cover my face and felt the weight of sunglasses and a mask inside my pockets. I placed them on my face, covering my face. That should do the job. Ignoring the security at the stadium, I rapidly ran to the audience seats. Parts of the crowd seemed to notice my existence, and whispers of gossip flooded the stadium. I wasn't able to tell what they were exactly saying, but I knew they were making fun of my appearance. It was hard to ignore them, but I started to scream, "Everybody, please listen to me. The apocalypse is near." These words caught the attention of everyone in the stadium, from the little children in the audience to the players on the field. They all looked at me in confusion, and all the attention made me feel like a savior, a messiah of some sort. The stadium camera zoomed into me, and my appearance was displayed across the screen. The sunglasses and black mask covering my face, the black suit and pants covering my entire body, leaving barely any trace of skin to be exposed. Regardless of all the attention I was receiving, nobody in this reality understood. But with all my efforts, I will help them see. I need to find a way. I must find a way. Even if it takes 100 years, even if it means I'll sell my soul, I'll do it. I will find a way to prevent this apocalypse. My screams continuously echoed throughout the stadium as the date displayed on the screen was caught out of the glimpse of my eye. August 21st.
August 21st. 21st. 21st.
To my forest friends, thank you for listening to another horrible tale. Dusk is a time of transition. It is an owl's wake-up call. As the shadows grow longer and darkness takes over, the only thing to really fear is fear itself. So be still in the storm, and I promise you, you will be safe. Please help this channel grow to 10,000 subscribers by ripping at the subscribe button and scratching a comment. I read every single comment here and am honored and energized by each new subscriber. More tales are in the works, so I hope to see you very soon here on the Smoking Owl Tales channel on another night very soon.
On another night very soon. Another night very soon. Another night very soon. Very soon.